Awesome. All right. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jen DaSilva, for those of you who don't know me. Really excited to have you here today for this awesome session. I mean, truly, we are so blessed to have Denise with us. Just a quick intro on Connect 4 for those of you who don't know. I started this community in 2019, and it was all about making connections for women. And since I've started it, I've made over 5,000 connections for women. We've actually had a tremendous growth in the community in the last couple months. And I think that's due to some of the job searching and pivoting that's happening right now in the marketplace. But we went up from 150 members in our private LinkedIn community to 610. And it's pretty awesome. And what we're sharing there is job searches. We're doing all sorts of programming. So programming from, how to pivot, about confidence talks, about personal branding. We're actually having a coach's corner tomorrow where people who are going through the job search are coming together to connect. And that's going to be an ongoing thing for us. Any suggestions are always open. And very simple asks in joining the community. It's about reaching out to other community members. So we ask that you, reach out very simply. It could be just an in-mail to 4 different members per month in some way. It could even be just a comment on the post. And then, trying to attend some programming and give some suggestions, and then making connections for women in your space and in your world. And really, that's the mantra of the organization. But I was lucky to meet Denise, and this was actually in Texas, in her home state in Austin, for South by Southwest. And we were there to talk about a study that we just launched on loneliness in the workplace. And this is a true passion area of mine. And what we found is that, women at the top are twice more likely to be lonely than men at the top. And why is that? It's because the workplace is set up for men, right? When they get to the top, they get to this club, they have all their friends. When we get to the top, it's lonely. And who do we have to turn to? It's the networks that we create for ourselves, right? We have to do the work. And what's happening is that women on the ladder who are seeing us, I'm sorry, I'm also entering people into the room, seeing this loneliness, they're actually jumping off of the ladder because they don't want a life like this, right? So how do we start to think about this loneliness crisis and really ensure that we're doing it differently? And I think that the onus is on the workplace. There was actually an article written by the Surgeon General yesterday that was saying that this is an epidemic on par with COVID. And he is trying to create all of these connection moments, right, to bring women together. And really, that is the impetus for this Connect for Women and this program. So Denise got to speak on one of our panels about this. And I loved what she said and how she said it so much that I invited her to Seattle a month later to speak for Microsoft. And now she's here with us today. And this, this session is all about your confidence. But I wanted to introduce Denise. She's a nationally recognized diversity and inclusion leader. She specializes in ally training, so thinking about how to raise people up and bring people together in connection. She's the founder of WatchHerWork. She basically left corporate America and some amazing jobs at Fortune 500 organizations like AOL and CBRE. To form her own company because she saw that she could make more of an impact on her own than she was doing corporately, and she's doing an amazing job. She just released her book to some readers, and it's going to come out next year, and I cannot wait to read it. I'm truly inspired by Denise. People say that her superpower is the ability to have the most challenging discussions and really come out of the other side with awesome solutions and positive direction. And so that is it. And this is going to be a fireside chat format, and she's going to do some types of asking you to provide some answers and things like that throughout. So we hope we can hear from you as well. So Denise, I would love to have you start by telling your story and why speaking to women leaders is so important to you.
Well, quite frankly, I'm obsessed. I just think that women are an untapped, just treasure trove of genius that we have left kind of underutilized. And so I am thrilled to be a part of any group that is helping women to reach the levels that we deserve to be at, right? So this topic of confidence is really, really important to me. I've been the first or the only woman or African-American in every job I've ever had. And so I've been at the tip of the spear and been able to kind of see the dynamics and navigate them successfully. And so people always ask me, how was I able to do that? Like there was a point where I could have had, coffee 5 times a day because everybody wanted to pick my brain and kind of ask, like, how are you navigating these spaces? And I have to say that one of the criteria, one of the things that made me effective in these environments was confidence. I just really believe that the only people that can change the world are the ones who think they can. And it's really as simple as that. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so the flip side of this, and I want to put this disclaimer out before we have this conversation, is I don't believe in blaming women for environments they have not built or that have not been built for them, right? So there is no shaming or minimizing of kind of our natural way of moving through the world in my conversations, right? The bottom line is I approach the workplace like an alien nation, a foreign land that I'm going to, and my job is to learn the language that they speak. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different from how I might naturally do it. But when in Rome, do as the Romans. So there's a piece of me that loves these conversations, and another piece that says only if we do it in a way that lets us know we're not broken, there's nothing wrong with us, we're not substandard in any way. It's just, what are the opportunities to reimagine the best ways to approach the things that we want to do and the big dreams we want to have brought to life, in our lives. That's how I think about it. So I love this topic around confidence, because I think we talk about it in a way that shames women, and I want to not do that. So when I think about my career journey, I think about the places that I have been and the lessons I've learned. There are like too many to discuss just on this phone call, but one of them is really the contrast between how I've seen women move through professional environments and how I've seen men do it. And again, it's not a right or wrong, it's just a difference. And I think it's really helpful to point out what those differences are so we can better navigate them. There's nothing worse than being someplace and expecting everyone to adapt to you. Like, the reality is you're going to have to do a little adapting to them, and they're going to have to do a little inclusion of you. So it's meeting in the middle, not so much one is right and one is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And why do you think when we saw this in our data, right, about how on a daily basis, women are facing so much more anxiety and this fear, and we always talk about imposter syndrome, right? Why is confidence and exuding this more difficult in sometimes for women than it is for men?
Well, I don't think we have a language for it, right? We say we do, but we don't really have a language for it. What does a confident woman look like? What does she do? Right. And it's like, yeah, do you have I just saw Amy Cuddy at TED last week, and she's like, her power pose. I think that the bottom line is we're new. We talk about this topic like we've been around for hundreds of years, but women really asserting themselves, being in leadership positions, it's still new. We still don't have a language and an archetype of what a successful woman looks like, moves like. How does she relate? Is she mean and aggressive? Is she kind and motherly? And we have all of these stories that kind of like are in the backs of our heads that we haven't successfully purged, right? Like, for example, Rapunzel. Hopefully everybody on this call has seen or has heard the story of Rapunzel, right? And let's really unpack it. Let's talk about Rapunzel for a minute. Rapunzel is stuck in a tower with no doors. She uses her inappropriately long hair to help her mother, the witch, get in and out of the tower. Later, she helps the prince get in and out of the tower. Girl it was your own hair. It never occurred to her to use her own hair to get out of the tower. These are the stories that have fed us our entire lives. Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Snow White, all waiting for somebody to come along and save them from their condition, right? We didn't grow up with a lot of examples of agency. And this isn't that long ago. Let's talk about The Little Mermaid. Like, Ariel literally gives up her mermaid status before she had ever even spoken to Eric, the prince. She had never spoken to him. So what is the moral of the story of The Little Mermaid? You can have the man of your dreams. All you have to do is give up your voice. In my soul, that hit me. I was like, that's really the moral of that story. We set a generation of children in front of that story with no hesitation. And we're getting ready to do it again. We have a new version coming out at the end of this month, right? And then you think about Beauty and the Beast. Let's really remember the story. Belle's father is in the dungeon. He is cold. He is sick. He is starving. He is dying. She finds him, trades her freedom for his freedom. Now she's a prisoner in the castle. One night, the beast scares her so badly that she runs into the wolf-infested woods to get away from him. How do they end up happily ever after? That's Stockholm syndrome. That's not love, right? And so what's the moral of the story? What's the moral of Beauty and the Beast? True love can turn a beast into a prince. Anybody want their daughter to be in the business of turning beasts into princes? No. But these are the stories that live in our minds. And we think oh, those are kid stories. They don't matter. Stories tell us who we are. They tell us who the good guy is, what a captain looks like, who should live happily ever after. Stories shape us. And so we move into these situations and we have all of these stories. We have them and the guys have them. Of what does a woman look like? What's a good woman, right? So they're reconciling you, and they have their mom was a stay-at-home wife, their wife is a stay-at-home wife, and then here you come, and they're trying to reconcile them being good women with you being a good woman. Who's the good woman? What are it's just a lot of reconciling of what our identity is, and that's why I take the position I can't solve for your stories. There's really no way that I can be 100% of who you need me to be. So I might as well just be me. That's kind of where I land. There's no way that I'm gonna, and I think because women are more inclined to be harmonizers, right? Mm-hmm. That we're socialized to be peacekeepers, to be tenders of the home. Even if you don't work in the home, you're still supposed to be the tender of that garden, right? And so in our desperation to find a way that everyone can be happy, we sacrifice our own happiness, right? And thinking that that's going to work. And I just don't ever see that really actually work. Like, you just have to do you. You just have to get out the tower, right? Like, that's just where we are. And I think that as we're in this big renegotiation of roles and responsibilities and duties, we are better served if we move through the world authentically and have the courage to articulate our needs, right? It's kind of like everybody's obsessed with ChatGPT right now. And the idea that it's learning, the artificial intelligence is and I make it a point. I literally ask ChatGPT a couple questions every day. And I do that because it's learning. And I don't want anyone else to teach it about me, right? I want to be a part of that learning. I want to be at the table when my roles are being defined. So to me, the more amorphous you are, the more, and I don't want to sound like, I'm not saying that you don't want to be flexible. You want to be flexible, but you don't want to be so malleable to other people's feelings and other people's needs that you're not asserting what you need when we are in the midst of a renegotiation. That's what's happening right now. I don't call it the Great Resignation. I call it the great renegotiation. We're renegotiating, what do we think about responsibilities in the home? Should it be 50-50? A lot of people during the lockdown realized, oh, this is not 50-50. Like my husband is working and he's doing his thing, and I got the kids and the house and I'm still working myself. Like we saw a lot of assumptions challenged. And so we're renegotiating them. I can't renegotiate with somebody who is unsure of themselves, who is too malleable. So what I assert and what I suggest that women do is say what you want, get what you need. Be clear about what is optimal for you. And believe it or not, my experience has been that people tend to rise to that challenge. So I guess my summary of all of that is we have to be really careful about not subordinating our needs too much in an effort to create peace. Because if we do that, we'll miss out on justice.
I love that notion. And I mean, it's definitely something that I fall to too. I'm a people pleaser. And so that happens to me all the time where I'm putting other people's needs. And I think as mothers, sometimes we're doing that too. And at work, if somebody is facing this lack of confidence, and they're going into something tough, is there something that are tools that you could suggest for them? Because I know that even I'm a long time in my career. I'm a fairly confident woman. I still have imposter syndrome. In fact, I was doing a podcast the other day for Wharton Tech Talks. And right before it, I started literally having a panic attack. I didn't go to Wharton. My husband went to Wharton. He always talks about how Wharton was so, great compared to it's an Ivy League and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, tech, I'm not really in tech. This is about the metaverse. And if it's Wharton, that means I have to have really high credentials. And I don't. And I went in and this girl, she's at Wharton right now, so 20 years old, and I'm 46, and went in and I said, I should tell you that I'm having a lot of imposter syndrome right now because of the Wharton thing and the expert on tech. And she's like, let me just ask you the questions. And so you know what's going to be happening. And she asked me the questions. I was like, oh, I got this. Forget what I said. I'm going to be great. But even then, these feelings and how we persevere beyond them, because I was almost about to give this opportunity to someone else. There's someone else that's better than me in doing this. And I would love to hear what you would say to someone when they go into the situation as ready to walk, and instead help them walk in.
I think it's so interesting because it's check your evidence. That's what I always do in those situations. First, I want to talk about imposter syndrome. Let's divide. I'm not a lover of the term imposter syndrome because sometimes you really don't know what you're doing, right? We kind of lump everything into imposter syndrome. Sometimes you don't have the skills. You don't know what you're doing. That is not usually the case with women. We're over prepared. We know we color coded all the things. We got everything filed and organized, right? But I do think there is sometimes that you need to have some humility around what your skills are, right? And what your knowledge base are. So, but let's carve out that group of things. But if you know what you're talking about, and I think it's really interesting in this example that you just gave, if you didn't go to Wharton and you didn't go to Ivy League and you don't know tech and why did they invite you? Why did they ask you? It's their show and they reached out and they invited you. What evidence do you need beyond that? Right. But we also, I think this thing of requiring all of this evidence that we deserve to be there or that we belong is such a trap. Because I got to tell you, the guys in my life do not worry about evidence and whether or not they belong. They just, oh, I got in, I got a ticket, I got an invitation, I got on the podcast, I got this, and they just go with it. And so what is it that makes us ignore the evidence that we belong? That's the real question, right? And your example's a perfect one, because they would not have invited you if you were not the right person. If you think they're smart, then why would you think that was a terrible decision? So you have this body of evidence on this side that says, I'm the person for this job. I'm going to get in here and kill it. Can't wait to talk about it. But instead, we go to this other set of evidence that doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't, and it's not really even true. If there's one thing we learned a couple years ago in the college cheating scandal, everybody at the best schools in the country doesn't deserve to be there, right? There's legacy kids. They're not special. I may be breaking ground here, but there's 40-50% of them that are just okay, that are not any better or different or superior to you. They just had the mechanisms to get into those environments, right? So you have all this evidence that they're just people just like you. But again, it's the stories. It's the stories you've heard all your life about who's important and who's valuable and who matters. Like, you just have to decide, I matter. I've been doing this work for X years. I really have learned a lot about people in this way, I'm in environments never be in. I'm going to bring that perspective to this conversation, right? And if it doesn't go well, or if I don't match or I don't connect with you, that's not a reflection on me being deficient. That's a reflection on us not finding common ground. So if you don't come to the situation as a peer, you have cheated the situation right out the gate. Like, you cheated it because you didn't meet them as a peer. You met them as some kind of subordinate. You're lucky you're here. You're looking around to see if anybody's going to talk to you. I walk into a room and I expect people to talk, expect to connect with the people in the room. I know I've done incredible things. They've done incredible things. Can't wait to compare notes. But if you come in living beneath that privilege, you've cheated the whole room out of the full experience of you, right? And thereby sabotaging the very intent of them inviting you into the space, right? So a good way to think about this is like, you're having an office meeting and there's 15 people in the room and the guys are just talking, right? And you're sitting in the, first of all, you come in, you don't sit at the table, you sit against the wall, the little games we play, and you don't say anything for the whole meeting, right? Why? You owe your boss a refund because they paid for your genius to be in that room. There's a reason you got paid for an hour to be in that room. It's to weigh in, it's to comment, it's to contribute. And you're literally, how I think of it is like you're a thief because you're cheating them out of your particular brand of genius that they have paid for. So I think of it as a duty and as a responsibility for me to show up. And if I show up and you don't like me, I promise you, we will all survive. I know we will. I believe in us. We will all survive if we don't get along, if we don't gel. But I'm going to get my full, I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to give it my full commitment for this to go well. I'm going to show up as fully me and give you a chance to fully know me. And whatever happens from then, we can live with the consequences of that. But I feel like you cheat everybody. And we've done that, right? You said the young woman that's interviewing you is 20 and you're 46. We cannot cheat the 20-year-olds out of our wisdom. That's what we do. We do it a lot. We withdraw from the systems. We pull out. Oh, I don't know technology. That doesn't mean you're not wise. That doesn't mean you haven't learned about life and about people and about things. And sometimes we've stepped back because of pedigrees or because of, of technology or because of discomfort. And the truth is you leave a vacuum. Like, your wisdom really matters. And you have to believe that so that someone else can believe it.
I love that. If somebody that was reporting to you from that room, and you saw them being quiet and sitting up, the windowsill, like how some people sit up on the windowsill, kind of above, what would you tell them after if they weren't saying anything? Would you tell them that same thing as their boss? Because I know sometimes these conversations with, internally can be very tough, right? In order to bring your confidence out and telling someone, would you be as direct as you just were to them?
Yeah. because I would be cheating them if I didn't.
Mm.
Right. I want women to win. I want us to thrive. I want us to kill it in these spaces. And if there's subtle behaviors that are cheating us, then those subtle behaviors, those are easy levers to flick. Easy levers to flick. And and that gives an opportunity for the other people in the room to support you. So let's say Linda makes a suggestion and the room kind of reacts in a lukewarm way. And then Rick jumps on the suggestion and just repackages her suggestion and says it like it was his, right? We all had that situation where somebody has kind of like restated what you said. I'm that woman at the table, they'll say, how does that differ from what Linda just said? Can you contrast that for me?
Love that.
Right. And so I'm an extrovert. I'm further along in my career. I'm older, right? I have a little bit more currency to be able to do that. Everyone can't do that, but I can't do my thing. You don't do your thing. Like,
Right.
I need you to put up your idea so that the people in the room, the advocates and allies, can lift you up. Right. So the idea that every meeting somebody's going to be like, Terry, what do you think? I mean, that's nice. That's lovely. But you got to raise your hand. You got to raise your hand. You have to say the thing that you're thinking. And even if you had to think about it the night before, of like, this is exactly what I want to say, raise your hand and say it early. Right. But you have to contribute for people to remember you, for people to think about you. Like that's one of the biggest challenges with remote work, to be honest with you. Human nature says, if I see you every day, I hear your voice every day, I interact with you physically every day, it is very hard for me to treat you the same as I treat Elisa I only see in Zoom meetings. That's really a lot to ask of people who have not, of managers who have not received, in my opinion, sufficient training to do that. So if you're in the space, you got to raise your voice. Like, you have to tilt the odds. Like, human nature is, I'm cued into the person that is contributing, and whatever that looks like, right? And so you have to be careful about how you think about your ideas and the value of your ideas, because that was really the seed of it, right? I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if what I'm going to say is add value. I don't know. That's an interesting position to take. Then add value. That's where you focus your energy. Make sure you're coming up with a great suggestion or a thoughtful idea or a thoughtful observation. And if you're doing that, then share it. They don't have to accept your idea, right? Like and nobody's going to die if you put forth the idea and they don't like it, or they go in a different direction. So it's this fear, if I can't convert 100%, I'm not going to take the shot. Right. And that's not sustainable. And and to me, over time, that further erodes your confidence, because after a while, they're like, Jim, what do you think? Because they know Jim has a thought. They won't ask you because you never have a thought. It's reputational. So I find that it's incumbent upon us to share our ideas, not to be a conversation hog, not to talk over everybody and cut people off. Like, you still want to be just professional, all of the things. But if I have to err on the side, I err on the side of speaking up.
Yeah.
When they walk out of that meeting, everyone needs to know my name.
I love that. So Ivana put in the chat, and I think that this is an interesting is about like when speaking out, right? She's been told that she's overstepping or taking up too much space. Oh, it just like kind of make my stomach churn that anyone would ever like say that to you. What would you say? How do we react to that? And if that's something is a feedback point that they're getting.
So here's one of the challenging things about the spot that we're all in. We have to remain coachable, right? It's like we have to assert ourselves, but then we have to remain coachable. But who's coaching us, and what's their point of view? So like it's like 5-dimensional chess, right? So let's say you're in a group, as I've been many times in my career. It's you and 7 guys and a team. and they are prone to cutting you off, not letting you get your thoughts in. They really value age. I'm 52, but I look a lot younger. So I've had this my whole life where it's like, oh, little girl, you can't possibly know what we should do in this situation. Those situations, you just have to define yourself and then insert yourself, right? But at the same time, you want to be coachable. And so it becomes a trust thing. If somebody says, you're talking too much in this meeting, you're rubbing people the wrong way, it's abrasive, like, do you trust the person that's giving you that advice? So if somebody said that to me and I didn't really trust them, I would ask other people that I do trust that are in the space. Hey, in that meeting the other day, did you feel like I was taking up too much oxygen, or that I wasn't letting people in? Yeah, you really could have listened to some more ideas. Okay, now that's feedback that you can work on. So I think it's really important to find people that you trust to give you feedback and to stay open. Just because somebody is obnoxious, is disrespectful, is misogynistic, doesn't mean they're wrong when they give you, some feedback. So you have to weigh it. You have to weigh it and balance it. And admittedly, what I'm saying is hard, right? It's hard because it's like, who do you trust? Who do you believe? But I also think that you have kind of like generally how you move through the world, but then you have the system that you're operating in. And you do have to figure out what the rules are that you're operating in. And I personally believe that one mistake I see a lot of people make, and this is everyone, this isn't just women, is they try to pay a bill. They haven't built the currency to pay it, right? You need to build currency, reputational excellence. Man, when Neha does a project, it is always on point. Man, when Courtney does something, you can count on it. If Rebecca says she's going to be there, she's going to be there, right? So once you build that currency, that reputational excellence in the space, that buys you the ability to go in and say, Tom, I really disagree with that perspective. I think that we should do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And the room has to say, well, Ivana does show up. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Like you built currency. And what I see very often is people kind of like come into a situation telling people how it's going to go, and they're not taking the time to understand that environment. What are the rules? What are the mores? What are the issues and the challenges? Who are the sacred cows? Who are the toxic superstars, right? You do your reconnaissance and figure out, okay, how am I going to play this? But if you build up a big enough bank, you can say almost anything, right? You really can. And the problem is, have you built up the currency?
Yeah, I love that. I love that notion of like building and maintaining your credibility, right? And like the continual showing of that and showing up for people. I think one of the things in this community, it's been a struggle for some is, there's a lot of like uncertainty in the marketplace, right? And that has like creates unrest and anxiety. So how do we find the confidence in a tough situation when we're kind of held back, or something like, we've been let go, which is incredibly debilitating to your confidence?
Mm-hmm. It's such an important question. It's so important because I think this is like the core of this whole conversation. Who are you? Who gets to decide who you are? Who outside of you gets to determine and decide who you are? Are you only significant in as much as your company has hired you? Are you only smart in as much as this group of people think that you're smart or think that you're gifted? I mean, that is just the core of it. And one of the things that is like, it's a double-edged sword, but being African-American, this has been a superpower for me. I know that there's rooms that I walk into that they have devalued me before I open my mouth and say one word. So if I allowed my identity to be validated, or my significance to be validated from this group of people, I'd be in deep trouble. So I, over the years, have developed a musculature that you don't get to determine who I am or what my value is. I do, right? So when I get situations that are disappointing or discouraging, I go back to this discussion of evidence. What is the evidence that I'm talented, that I'm really good at my job, that I'm knowledgeable? And I move from that evidence, not from this disappointment. This is a moment in time. This isn't the trajectory of my life. And I have a dear friend of mine, who works in an extremely competitive industry, and had COVID shut down her business. It was an entertainment business. Basically shut down her business. And she's really struggling. And as I talked to her, I found her confidence waning and she get more and more down. And I literally flew to where she lived and I sat with her and what is happening right now? Because if you move from that insecurity, that self-doubt, if you move from that space, you will not get out of this hole. You just won't get out of it. She just signed a contract for a multi-million-dollar 3-year contract with an incredible signing bonus. Right? And literally, she started changing her like how she was moving the day after I left town. And so this was like 3 months ago. And she literally signed this amazing deal. Nothing is different. I want to make that point. Nothing is different. She's the same person, has the same talent, has the same skills. But if you move from your desperation, you move from your disappointment, like no one wants to trade their brand of misery for your brand of misery. People want to find people that believe in themselves. And so even if I got every deal, if they called me tomorrow and said, your book's not coming out, if they called me tomorrow and said, all your speaking gigs for the rest of the year are canceled, I would still be Denise Hamilton. I would still be me, and I would still believe in my talent and my gifts and my capabilities. And so I think that this idea of at the core, and I think this is really deep work, right? It is. I'm saying it like it's easy, and I don't think it's easy. But if you can figure this out, I think everything else springs from that. I don't have to be a perfectionist because I value the gifts that I bring to the table. If you don't value the gifts you bring to the table, you feel a lot of pressure to be perfect across everything. I don't feel that pressure. I call it the Michael Jordan principle. The best basketball player in the world wants to play baseball. We don't value our gifts. We value what the person across from us can do. Oh, the best writer wants to be able to sing. The best singer wants to be an inventor. The best inventor wants to be a dancer. Like, we don't value it. The person that can really identify and articulate confidently what their giftedness is unstoppable. It's just unstoppable because no matter what the world says, right? You know what you bring to the table, and you'll just find another audience for your giftedness. That's how I just need another home for my giftedness. And so, but I'm clear on what that is. And if you ask me, I can relate that. Okay. Yeah. I guess I'll do this as a first exercise. If you got a notebook,
I was going to say, I'm like, if it's like a workout, right? You're like, doing your bicep curls. Like, how do we learn to articulate our own gifts? Like,
you gotta name them.
That's the exercise that you're going to do.
But let's take a few minutes right now and just write them down. What are your gifts? What are you good at? Right? And be careful that you don't just limit this list to the things that the world tells you are important. I tend to believe that the gift of encouragement is an incredibly powerful gift, right? But maybe the world doesn't value that gift, or you can't find a use of that. I don't know. What do you think? You think the gift of encouragement has been a good skill for Oprah? I think it has, right? Maybe like I'm always humbled when I think of like homemaking, right? Homemaking, like housekeeping. Like, is that a skill? Ask Martha Stewart a couple $2 billion later if homekeeping is a skill, folding the sheets right and getting the hens to lay to lay the eggs rather. Like, I think that there's always a marketplace for your giftedness if you have the courage to name and articulate your giftedness, right? And I use that Oprah example. Oprah was fired because she was too empathetic, too encouraging, too caring after the news story. She was a terrible news reporter because she wanted to follow up and how are you doing? And she wanted to ask a different set of questions. She turned that skill that was a deficit into multiple billions of dollars. So I guess I want to challenge us to think about this. And I keep this list in my phone, in my notes section. And I look at it whenever I feel, wait a minute, oh, that hurt my feelings. Oh, I'm undervaluing. And I'm always looking to add things to that list that I can name. Am I creative? Am I a creative problem solver? Do I really see opportunities where people see challenges? Am I cool under pressure? Am I just name it? You don't have to be all of the things. That is a lie. And it's a lie that the whole system tells us. You got to be able to do this and this and this and this and this. That's not how we're designed. We're designed to work in teams. We're designed that I can sing and you can choreograph and you can write the music and you can and so we have a beautiful Broadway show. One person can't do all of the things, all of the parts. So if we can suspend this idea that I have to be perfect across all of these metrics and instead focus on what our giftedness is, we'll just be unstoppable. I had a coworker come into my office. This is about 20 years ago. Came into my office and just didn't even speak to me. She went right to my bookshelf. She had brought a box with her and she started taking books off my bookshelf and putting it in her box. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And the books were Tame the Office Tiger, Get Clutter Under Control, Organization from the Inside Out. And she said, you are so phenomenal in so many areas of your life. I hate the idea that you spend even 2 seconds stressing about what your weaknesses are. If you, instead of reading books about your weaknesses, read some books about taking your strengths from a 7 to a 9 to a 10. Like, you're going to change the world with your gifts. You're not going to change the world fixing all of your little weaknesses and quirks. You're just not. That's not how I make sure that my weaknesses don't cannibalize my strengths. I think that's important. But I practice what I call strategic mediocrity. Strategic mediocrity. If you don't take anything from this conversation, take that. Strategic mediocrity. There are just some places that we have to learn to step over the laundry. There are just some places that we just have to allow things to be just okay. Because I've decided in these 2 or 3 areas, I want to knock it out the park. I want to be an incredible mother. I want my kids to know I love them and I would do anything for them, right? That's really important to me. I want to make sure that I am the litigator of choice. I want to make sure that if you are putting together a strategic team to do this major tech project, you think of me, right? So do you need to wash the dishes every night? And I know I'm like, all my type A's are starting to twitch as I talk about this, right? Because we have been lied to. We've been lied to. If we look at our male counterparts, executive counterparts, look at their lives. They have structured their lives that they don't do anything they don't want to do. I have guy friends that don't know what the name of their kids' elementary school is. And I'm not saying we need to go that far, but I'm saying that it's okay to get a housekeeper. It's okay to get a house manager. It's okay to get childcare or figure stuff out in such a way that protects your ability to be truly creative and innovative around your gifts, right? And nobody, I always used to, I couldn't understand, how are my guy counterparts playing golf every Friday? How are you playing 18 holes of golf? I feel like my hair is on fire. I can barely get everything done that I need to get done and race to the this and race to that. And then a friend of mine sat me down and she just broke it down. She said, every woman I know is involved in 3+ charities. They're sitting on this board, that board, they feel like they have to host this at the kids' school. They feel like they have to da-da-da. And they're trying to be good at their job. And they pile things on because our identity is in doing, right? If I bump into a friend of mine, how do we connect? Oh, Jen, oh my gosh, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long. What's going on? What are you up to? Well, we're building a house and I just got this. I'm hosting a gala. I'm the co host for the gala for the charity. And little Johnny has just started baseball and that's so exciting. And it's this laundry list of everything that we're doing. And why do we do that? Because that's how we value each other. I value you. The more you do, the more valuable you are. And that's not true.
No.
The less you do, the more valuable you are. And I know my type A's are twitching, but the less you do, the more valuable you are. You need space and time to think, right? The two, arguably the greatest scientific advancements of the 20th century, think of how they came about. I would say Einstein, right? Einstein, he didn't develop the theory of relativity at work. It was in letters back and forth with his friends in his free time, right? Sir Isaac Newton, the theory of gravity, he was sequestered because of the plague. So he was bored and he was sitting and literally was like, this apple is falling, and started doing experiments. We need some boredom, ladies. We need some boredom. We need some peace. We need some quiet so creativity can percolate and bubble. And you know what I'm saying? So this idea of doing less to allow yourself to only grade yourself on the stuff you care about. Don't grade yourself or let other people grade you on things you don't care about. So that decision, so that's a little homework assignment. What do you care about? What are the 3 things you really care about, professionally, personally, that you really want to put your energy into? And look at your calendar, look at your phone logs, look at how you're spending your time. Do those lists match up? Are you doing a bunch of busy stuff, or are you really pouring in to those 3 things? Because if you're pouring into those 3 things, the confidence will match it, because you've done the work, you've done the investment, you are ready to step up to the plate. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. Well, I think we have time for one question because I know you have another speaking gig today. So I see Rebecca says, how do you think the female attitude to money is different? It's a big one
That's a big one. It's a big one because it's really wrapped up into, it's fear, right? Like for so many of us, money is a proxy for our worth, right? And so in negotiation for salary, I'm going to say a number because if you don't like a low number, because if you don't like my number, that means you don't like me. And I can't trust that you're really going to like me. So I'm going to give you a low number. And then we're resentful the whole time we're at that organization because we're at a low number. It's not fair. I think the way I think about almost everything is, what can you take responsibility for, right? You didn't create this system, but you have a responsibility for how you operate in it, right? And so if an opportunity if they're not valuing you when you walk in the door, why walk further into the kitchen? Why walk further into the boardroom or into the cafeteria? Like, why are you going deeper into a space that at the entrance, they didn't value you? Mm-hmm. So having the courage to say, this is what I need to get from this situation. And this is what I think I bring to the table to justify that is a deeply personal. We've made it very personal. And so how can you, I guess, how can you move your thinking so that it's really about match? because if I don't care about, if I don't really love country music and I'm negotiating, somebody's like, hey, you want this ticket to the country music concert? I'm like, not really. Oh, it's only $100. I don't want to go to that. Like, I don't care. So I'm not negotiating in a way that's productive for me. But if there's somebody I really want to see, I'm in it. I'm going back and forth. I'm trying to figure out, can we do this? Can we do that? So sometimes we're negotiating with people who aren't worthy of us and we don't need to be in those environments. And even that is scary to say, because then you ask yourself the worst question a woman can ever ask herself. Who do you think you are? What do you think you are? This company just offered you this money. You're not going to take it? Who do you think you are? We ask ourselves that question. And the truth of the matter is, I think I'm a really accomplished, incredibly talented, gifted professional that can bring a lot to this organization. And if you don't like it, that's okay. I'll find somebody else that likes it. So that's true of relationships. That's true of jobs. That's true of friends. That's true across the board. So confidence to me is kind of wrapping all, it's how you look at yourself in the contexts that you operate in. And if you can find the courage to value yourself by naming and finding the words, and if you need help, ask a friend. Sometimes I'll send an email to all, like a group of 50 of my friends. How would you describe me? Because I'm rewriting a bio or I'm doing a blurb, my author thing for the book. I think it's interesting. Collect the evidence of who you are and match it with who you think you are, and spend some time reconciling those two things. And I think you come out with a much better platform to stand on, right? Because that's all we need. We just need a good, sturdy platform. We know we're talented. We know we can fly. We need a solid stage to jump from. So just build that for yourself.
I love that notion. I love the notion of collecting the evidence, right? So you doing it personally and you putting out an ask to your, the people that are sitting around your table, I think is so important, because we overlook sometimes our own personal gifts. And sometimes seeing it through the lens of people who love you is so powerful. Any other last questions for Denise? And it went so fast. I was like, oh my God, it's 55. Any last questions? All right, I don't see anyone coming off. I'm flipping through everyone's names. Well, I truly appreciate everyone being here today. And I know I wrote a ton of notes for my own self. This is work that we're constantly doing. And I truly think you're inspirational. So my ask to you guys is, if you hear of a great speaking gig for Denise, please think of her. Especially when her book comes out next year. Getting those books into corporate hands is always important, right? So that's the kind of thing that we can help Denise with. And you can help yourself by doing all the tips that she said, collecting the evidence of who you are personally and by asking your friends. And then I love the notion of strategic mediocrity. I can't wait to take some of these things off my list and hand them off.
Delete. Somebody asked if they could connect on LinkedIn. Please do. Please reach out and feel free to reach out and follow on all the spaces. I'm official DHAM on all the socials. And I would encourage you to make sure you're all following each other. This is the currency of our time. In our minds, it kind of doesn't matter, but the truth is it's a metric that does matter. I go in, I make sure I like women's comments. I comment on what they say, because that gooses the algorithm to says that our voices matter, that they're really important. So don't underestimate that like or that share. It makes a difference. It's a small thing you could do to elevate the voices of women.
Thank you. And have an amazing time in Greece. I hope it's as awesome as you expect it to be. So enjoy. All right. And thank you, ladies. Happy Monday. All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.